this is international psychic medium Susan Schueler. Welcome to my show, Midlife Conversations. Today, joining us on the show is Shawna Wendt. Hi, Shawna.
Hi.
Thank you for being on the show. Today, we are going to be talking about growing up in a home that we would probably consider now as being dysfunctional. Years ago, this wasn't a word that was ever used, but now I think most of us can connect with a lot of the parts of what the definition of a dysfunctional home is. So I'd like to just start off just explaining what are some of the characteristics of a dysfunctional home. So, and I don't know about Shawna, but for me, when I first read this list, it was like a checklist of my life. So dysfunctional family characteristics: addictions, perfectionism, abuse, meaning active harm like verbal, physical, or violent abuse, neglect, which could be inactive harm, either physical or emotional, not feeding your child, withholding love, interest, or attention, living in fear, or living with a parent who is constantly unpredictable, conditional love, where it's manipulative with their affection, lack of intimacy, which means like their relationships are all superficial, and then finally, poor communication, where you can't voice your opinions or issues are swept under the carpet. I think a lot of us have dealt with that, where they just don't talk about certain things. So before we get into your story, Shawna, though, I just want to share a quote that is from the book, The 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom. Most of us know Mitch Albom from writing Tuesdays with Morrie. His lesser known work is The 5 People You Meet in Heaven, and it's a really powerful little piece. But I'm just going to read this quote. He just talks about parents. All parents damage their children. It cannot be helped. Youth, like pristine glass, absorbs the prints of its handlers. Some parents smudge, others crack. A few shatter childhoods completely into jagged little pieces beyond repair. Whew. To me, that's such a powerful statement.
Yeah.
Very, very powerful. And I think and as a parent yourself, there's such a responsibility with being a parent, because if you come from a dysfunctional home, you know how it can affect you. So just give us a little bit of background, Shawna, about the dynamics of where you grew up, how it was. I know you had a sister, so just tell us a little bit about it.
My first memory of my family, or my mom and dad being divorced, was when I was living with my father. And I recall I was really young because I was not in school. And it was when he had married his then wife after my mom. She had 2 children. So it was 4 of us, my sister and I, and then her 2 children. And then my mom.
Did you move in from your mom? You moved in with your dad?
You know, that's a good question, because I try to recall where I lived at what point in my life, and there was a lot of shuffling between the two. So I remember I lived with my father, my stepmom then, and then I guess my next memory was living with my mom and her new husband in Arkansas.
Okay.
So
and
that
so
would have been
mom did remarry?
My mom has been married 6 times.
Okay.
She was married once prior to my dad and had 2 children prior to my dad, of both which were given up for adoption.
Okay. Okay. Now, with her being married 6 times, did you know all of those husbands? I mean, were they when you were in your early years, or was this later on too?
Her first husband before my father, no, I'd never met him. It's one of my half-sister's fathers, which I'm very close with. My mom had given her up to her father when she was around 3. And I'm pretty sure she did that because to nail down my dad, if that makes sense.
Wow, okay.
My dad's family was a very affluent family, and I think that they had, back then, a lot of judgment. I mean, a very young woman and having, a child. So my mom gave her up. And then, like I said, my next memory is my mom's husband, number 3, that we lived with in Arkansas.
Did you get along with him?
Oh yeah, I loved the guy.
Okay.
I'm friends with him on Facebook.
Okay.
He was,
That's
yeah, he was
awesome.
a
I
great,
love that.
he was a great guy. Yeah.
Okay. And how did your sister deal with all this? Is she like, how is she different from you?
My sister was a daddy's. She and my dad were super close. So she was a daddy's girl. I've always been very stern and stood up for myself, and so that didn't fare well with his wife because she was very abusive, and I would stand up to her at times, and and I remember one time. It was a bad situation with my stepmother, and I was packing my things saying, I'm going to live back with mom, which I don't even think I knew where mom was at the time. But I remember my sister just sitting in the closet crying profuse, please don't leave me. Just don't, I can't, don't leave me. So I didn't.
Right. And of course, it's always tricky when you come into somebody else's dynamic.
Mhm.
So with her two kids, did you get along with her two kids?
Yeah, we got along. Yeah, we got along. I think my stepmom was very jealous of my sister and I don't mean you and I have discussed this before. I think it was kind of like the Cinderella story.
Mhm.
Her girls weren't, as smart as my sister and I, weren't as cute as my sister and I. And so my stepmom was really abusive. I mean, my sister always fought weight issues. And so my stepmom would call her names. I remember once she put my sister's hair in a ponytail and cut it off at the ponytail. Um,
Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
she, it was
Now,
interesting.
okay, let me ask this, okay, because I think a lot of times, especially stepmothers, because I
Mhm.
had a stepmother too, they put on a game face when they're around dad, and then they behave kind of differently when we're around.
Mhm.
So did she do this kind of thing, or did your dad have an idea of what she was like? Did he even know she cut off the
No,
ponytail?
she never did it while dad was around. She was still very stern with us, and but as far as the abuse, the physical and the emotional, she never did it when my dad was around.
Now, did you know as a kid why you left living with mom and moved in with dad?
Because my mom got a divorce, and so she couldn't care for us. So the stepfather, I said that I really liked the guy. They ended up divorcing. He was a musician, still is to this day. And my mom was so fearful of him cheating on her that she would drive up to the VFW while he was playing and go into the bar and leave my sister and I in the car till all hours of the night while he played, just because she was so fearful of him cheating on her. And so they ended up divorcing, and that's when she shipped us back to my dad's.
Now,
Because
okay, so was this even in the winter time? Because I know you're from, where were you living at this point?
Conway, Arkansas.
Okay, so she left you in the car
Mhm.
until, wasn't it cold?
I don't remember the temperature. I just remember sitting in the floorboard crying.
Oh my, oh my God. And it's, now we don't even do that with our dogs. I mean, I couldn't
Oh,
imagine leaving a child.
no.
God. Oh my God. Okay, so then you moved in with your dad and your stepmom. So she probably wasn't happy to have you in the first place.
No, and that's when my dad and or my stepmother cut off all communication with my mom. I never saw my mom again for years.
Oh, for like how many years?
Uh, I think I was in the second grade when I went back to live with my dad, and my mom started getting visitation with us again around summer of fifth grade
Oh my
or sixth
gosh.
grade, because I moved back in with my mom summer before the sixth grade when she
Okay.
had another husband that could provide for us.
Okay. Oh my gosh. So she kind of, oh my gosh, this is gonna sound horrible to say, but she
It's
kind of needed to get rid of the kids so she could land another man.
I guess, yeah.
Oh,
And what she did in those 3 years, my sister and I have often thought about that. I mean, there could have been another husband. Who knows? You know
right.
what I mean?
Right. Wow. Now, how did you feel? If you can remember, I know a lot of us who come from dysfunctional homes, we sort of have selective memory loss. We forget certain
Mhm.
things, you know.
Mhm.
But how did you feel if you can remember? Not because I mean, I was a mama's girl as a little kid. I can't imagine not having my mom around me as a kid. So how did that feel?
It was bad. It was terrible. And I remember when she first started, um, we were allowed to talk to her on the phone. And I remember I was in the garage talking to her, and she had offered to come basically kidnap me, steal me from school. And
Wow.
I was, yes, please do. I didn't know my dad was on the other phone listening. So that was a big deal. I got sent to a counselor because I denied every word of it, trying to
Right.
protect my mom and not get beat, if you
Right.
will. So my dad and stepmom put me in counseling after that for lying.
Now, did
And I'll
your
never forget. This is a funny story. I remember the counselor left me in this room, and there was a mirror on the wall, and I was young, but I wasn't stupid. And I remember walking up to the mirror and putting my face because it was a two-way mirror, and I'm all waving at the counselor.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah,
That
so
is so
I
funny.
think my counseling days are over then.
Oh my gosh, that's hysterical. Now, did your stepmom hit you?
Mhm.
Okay, like what kind of stuff? Like
It
just
was it was never with a hand. It was always a board or a belt with brass rings. It was, yeah, it was
eh,
never a hand.
did she hit her own children as well?
Hmm.
Okay,
Not
so she,
not as much, but yes. I mean, it was typical. If one of us did something in her eyes that was wrong, we all paid for it. I remember once we were sitting on the back deck, and somebody had done something wrong, and so she lined all four of us up with a board, and everybody, after we got what she was giving us, I was sitting on the lawn furniture and I wasn't crying. I was mad. And she walked up to me and she goes, "Oh, that it didn't have that much of effect on you, hon." So she whacked me in the forehead with the board.
oh my,
I mean, I don't mean to laugh, but I
no,
mean,
I mean, to me, it's, we laugh at things like this now, but it
right.
certainly was not funny at the time. And I mean, I couldn't imagine hitting my dog or my cat. I mean, I just, especially in the head, to hit a child. I mean, yeah, I can't even wrap my head around that. Now, did dad know that she hit you?
I don't remember. I don't think so. No, I know he didn't because I don't want to fast forward into our interview, but later on when I was 18, my sister and I had told my father everything that she did to us as children. And
Well, okay, before you even say anymore, what made you want to do that? What was it at that point that you're like, I got to come clean to dad?
my sister and I had gone from Arkansas to my dad's in Kansas because he had bought my sister a car for graduation. And so um, when my sister had sent my father an invite to her graduation, my sorry, I typically called her the step beast. She responded with a letter and saying to my sister, if you're not pregnant or in any kind of trouble, your father will be there. Well, my sister responded because my sister was always the good student, did everything by the book, blah, blah, blah. So my sister responded to that. And so fast forward, when my dad picked us up from the bus station, he had that letter. And, or no, he didn't have the letter, but he told my sister when we got into the pickup truck, first thing he said to her is, Sandy is expecting an apology for that letter. And so, just to keep peace for the visit, she's like, I don't agree with it, but I will apologize if that's what you're asking of me. So when we finally got to my dad's house, my stepmom had the letter my sister had written in her hand, and she got my sister's face and put the letter in her face and said, you're going to explain every effing word in this letter. And that was the first time my dad, I think, ever witnessed
Mm-hmm.
the way she treated us. And so he stood up for us. He said, what are you doing? Um, they got in a huge fight and she left him that day.
Oh, wow.
So that's when my sister and I decided we need to tell him everything that she did, as children. And so we told him, we cried, explained a lot of things that she did to us, had a really great visit, truth be told. And then when
Did he feel really bad about it? I mean, was it?
no, my dad's not sentimental. My dad's never going to go give you a hug and go, I'm so sorry that happened to you. But I felt that he received it and um, thought it might have, I don't know what we thought would end up. We never had dreamt what ended up happening would happen. So we left, and I didn't tell him I was pregnant. I was 17.
Oh,
I was,
wow.
I didn't tell my dad then that I was pregnant. And so when we got home, about a month later, we get a letter from my father. It was the day before my 18th birthday. We got a letter of basically of disownment from my dad, and told us that we were sorry, pardon the language, we were fucking sick little lying bitches for everything that we had told him that she had done.
So he got back together with the
Oh
stepmother
yeah.
at this
Yeah,
point, and she just told him it was all baloney.
yep. No. I'm gonna take a drink too.
Wow, that's craziness. And do you know, this is something that I have seen numerous times when men remarry. It's like the first family kind of goes off to the wayside,
Mhm.
and the other family takes precedence.
Mhm.
And I know I always called my stepmother step monster. That's funny that you
Mhm.
should say that. Yeah. So I mean, I hate to say that there's a stereotype for stepmothers for a reason.
Mhm.
I can definitely see that. Wow. So then did you make up with your dad at any point? I mean, where did it go from there?
No, it was many years before that we had any correspondence with my dad. I think the next that I can remember correspondence I had with my dad was I became really sick when I was 28 and I almost died, and he drove down and saw me in the hospital, and so that was kind of opened up the olive branch, and he came back around
And was he still with your
for
stepmom at
10
that
years.
time?
Oh yeah, they were together until she died in a car wreck
Wow. How long ago did she die?
10 years ago.
Okay. Because your dad's still alive, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Okay. So what's your relationship with him now? Do you ever
Basically
talk
the
about this sort of stuff?
no. Mm-mm.
So it's just very superficial.
We don't talk often. I mean, I'll text him and check on him every now and then, but we don't have a whole lot to talk about, truth be told.
Right. And what about your mom? What happened as the years got older with mom?
Well, mom, after the stepfather, like I said, that she divorced him, and then when she got legal visitation with us again. She
And so
had
how old
remarried.
were you when you lived back then with mom after you had the legal visitation?
I was probably in the fifth grade when we started seeing her again on weekends, and so she had remarried, and my sister and I had made the decision that we wanted to live back with my mom, but we knew my father would never allow it. So every time we would go visit her every other weekend, we would take more clothes and leave them there. So when we did decide to stay, we had clothes.
Oh, wow.
And so that's what we did. We called my dad and told him we weren't coming home. And of course, being the youngest, my sister being the oldest, she refused to do it. I had to do it.
Right.
But we and then he get your asses home, and we never did. So
So he never went through the legal,
mm-mm,
he didn't do any of
mm-mm,
that sort of stuff.
no.
And so mom never actually, so did anybody ever actually have like legal custody of you, or they never did that? Don't know.
Truthfully, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that she just got visitation back, and I obviously he never fought to get us back.
Okay. And so what was it like growing up with your mom then in those later years?
Well, when that happened, my mom was on her fourth marriage, and he was an alcoholic. He was in Vietnam. He suffered from Agent Orange. And so every time, and I think he was shot by a Vietnamese woman while he was in Vietnam. And so every time he got drunk, he would remember that and beat the crap out of my mom.
Oh no. And you
So
guys heard it all.
I remember he came home drunk one night, and it was in the middle of the night, and he broke the coffee table, and I remember my sister picking up one of the legs and hands it to my mom. This man was 6'4". He was huge. My mom's barely 5 foot tall, probably at the time 89 pounds. And my sister hands him the leg to the coffee table like she was going to defend herself with it. I remember it was winter. There was so much snow on the ground, and my sister and I ran out the door, and he stopped my mom at the door and grabbed her by the throat and raised her up against the wall. And I mean, the only reason I think he let her go is because my sister and I were screaming. And so we walked to the Quick Trip, called our aunt to come get us. And that was the divorce number 4.
Gosh. So then how old were you when that happened?
That was 6th grade.
Okay, so then how long? So now at that point, mom had to have you with her for a few more years before she met the next man, right?
Yes. After moving, or I mean, at that point, after that divorce, or they weren't married all that long when we moved back in with her. And so that I moved in with my mom summer of the fourth, sixth grade, and we stayed in Wichita until semester change of my eighth grade year.
So
And it,
how many times would you say you moved as a kid?
in that amount of time with my mom, from the sixth grade to the eighth grade,
No,
13
from
times that
like
I can recall.
the
In
time that you
two
were a little
years,
little.
13 times.
Say that again.
In 2 years, 13 times.
Oh my God. How did you ever deal with the school situations? I can't even wrap my head around that.
That we went to Meade Junior High and Allison Junior High. So we always, we stayed within at least two school districts in those 13 times.
So did you have many friends?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's, it's funny. We had a lot of friends, and we always hung out with people older than us. And, so my mom, before she remarried, she just hung out with all of us, and she would do things with, smoke weed with my friends, go to parties, that we obviously should not have been at.
Right. Right. So then how did she meet your next stepdad?
We moved to Arkansas, semester change of the eighth grade, 1983.
Okay.
I was 13. No,
Okay.
I was 12.
And was he any better?
He was an alcoholic. He wasn't abusive, but he was an alcoholic. And I'm not sure honestly what was the main reason that they divorced. But when they did separate, my stepfather, that is my stepdad now, he was on the front porch moving our things from Tony's house into his pickup truck for us to move in with him.
So mom must have known him. In other words,
they worked together.
There was
yes.
an overlap. Okay.
So, well, there you go. Ding, ding, ding. She found somebody else.
Oh my gosh. And so is mom, so what happened then?
They're still married. They married when I was 15. They've been married 33 years. He's a good man. I have nothing bad to say about him. He's only 10 years older than me. But I don't look at him that way. I mean, I remember in high school, I dated a guy that was older than my stepdad, which should not have happened either. But he's a good man.
And isn't that interesting, if she's been married to him for that long, for her to have that many husbands beforehand?
Right.
Like, holy cow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So you look at all of the different adversity that you went through. And I mean, this is definitely not a stable childhood, but I'm a firm believer that through adversity, we grow character. Mm-hmm. So what would you say are some positive things that came out of this very challenging childhood?
I take independence to a fault a lot. I will never be dependent on a man, and raising my daughter, I never brought men into her life. She saw me with one person her entire growing up, because I saw my mom. I mean, there may have been X amount of marriages, but there were a lot of men in between also. We lived with several different men between the marriages. So that's one thing that I took from it that I never wanted my daughter to experience. Growing up, my mom, we always knew how poor we were because she told us, if I'm ever broke, you're never going to know about it. I'm never going to,
Right.
Right. I think that's,
how did this make, now, of course, now you have a daughter. So how did this make you parent?
Oh, well, the men thing, that's one. College was never spoken of in my family. That was not an option for my daughter. I mean, from birth, I was a young mother, but I did not want her to struggle, and I never wanted her to be dependent on a man. So college was never an option. You're going to college. So I think that's, I think raising her is my biggest attribute to my past experiences. I always wanted her to be financially stable on her own. And I think raising her the way I did, for instance, when she was 15, she got a hardship license, and I bought her first little red convertible. And I told her, anything your gas, your insurance is my bill. But the day you turn 17, your insurance and your gas is your bill for the rest of your life. And so it taught her how to pay bill, a repetitive bill and to be responsible. And so that now I'm not saying I was a perfect parent by any stretch, but
No, you didn't move as much as your mom did?
no, absolutely not. That was another thing. No.
Yeah.
I bought a home and we had a home.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. So do you think, because of your background and all of these things that happened to you, do you think that there's still triggers that you have, things that maybe you haven't been able to heal from because of the childhood that you did have?
I hate to say this and I hate to use this phrase, but I do think at some point in my choice in men, I think are a reflection of my not having a relationship with my father. I gravitate to men that I know will never go anywhere. Does that make sense?
So in other words, you want to be with somebody that's not going to turn into a serious relationship?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
I mean, because there was never, and I think that because there were so many men in and out, nobody ever stayed. And my dad never, he was never there. So I think that that's one negative that I have carried through that yeah.
So would you
Daddy
say
issues?
those are like abandonment issues? And so what you do is, I'm not going to allow myself to get close to someone, so you can't abandon me?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I know you're never going to be mine, you can't leave me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's interesting. And that is very candid. Thank you.
Mhm.
So let me just close with asking you this. What advice would you have for someone who's young and is thinking about having children?
Well, and I think it goes even further than just wanting to have children. I think that it goes to, women that even have children, that I noticed, friends from home, in different places, just the choices women make in raising their children, that I can see that are going to have long-term effects on their children, but I don't think that anybody thinks about that at the time. Just be, I don't know if that answers your question.
Think it through.
Yeah, think
Yeah.
it through and the choices that you make are going to have an effect at some point on your children.
Which takes us right back to that quote by Mitch Albom. I mean, it's just like you're going to leave a fingerprint somehow. I don't think anybody walks away from their parents. And that's why I think it's also, I remember my grandmother saying this to me, you'll understand your mother more if you have children.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, and I've never had children, but to me, it's like, once you become a parent, I think you have a better understanding.
Right.
And
I don't, in this whole conversation, my mom, her mother was awful. She did not have a role model. She did not have anybody to teach her how to be a parent. Her mother was an alcoholic. I think my mom, I know she did. She was living on the streets and here and there from like 14, 15 on. I mean, she, because her mom threw her out. So,
and isn't that interesting that she ended up with people that had drinking problems because that was what she was familiar with?
Right.
So that is kind of interesting. And I think that's part of the issue with the dysfunctional family is it does continue. It's a generational thing.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Shawna, I want to thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate this. Thank you. And I would also like to thank all of our listeners and our viewers for being here as well. And I just want to leave you with this. Although our stories may be unique, our collective experiences are what unites us. Remember, we are all one. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been Midlife Conversations with psychic medium Susan Schueler. Thanks for joining us. Do you have a story to tell? A conversation of sorts? A midlife conversation? Feel free to check out my website at mediumsusan.com and click on Midlife Conversations. Until then, To paraphrase Carl Jung, if we have nothing else to create, then perhaps we create ourselves.